everyone, it's Lisa from My Dreaming Soap. Welcome to my channel. Now today I'm doing a slightly different technique, and it's a technique called Intaglio or Intaglio. And what that means is it's basically a technique of carving into a surface to make a design. Now this is something that does exist out in the world, as it were. But the very first person that I saw that actually did it in soap and sort of thought of the idea of doing it in his soap is Clyde from Vibrant Soap. So what I'll do is I'll see if I can find the video where he actually did the technique, and I'm going to link it in the description below and you can go along and have a look at that video. So what I've got first of all, obviously nothing to do with carving. The soap that I made yesterday, I did some piping on the top of it, and I had some piping just left in my piping bag that I didn't want to just throw away or turn into soap dough. So therefore I just sat myself down and piped out some little flowers, roses / carnations, just, I don't know, generic type flowers. I did record how I did it, so I'm just going to drop that into the video now, and then after we've had a little look at that, we'll come back and we'll make the rest of our soap. Okay, so when we're going to pipe our rose, you want one of these leaf, petal, whatever we call them, tips, leaf tip, some people call them a petal tip. Basically they're in the range of 101, 102, 103, 104 if you're looking at Wilton's. And all that difference is the size. As you go up the numbers, you'll get a bigger tip. I quite like the small ones if you're looking for things like to pipe some embeds on the top of your soap, because you need to keep your rose relatively small. So I've just attached mine with a coupler, and I'm going to use it with the fat part at the bottom. And all I've done here is put on a little bit of my piping and a small square of some baking paper. So whatever you've got, baking paper, greaseproof paper, wax paper, anything. And first of all, we're just going to squeeze and turn the nail and sort of get a little bud in the middle. And then, to make the rose, we just want to keep the bottom, the fat part of the bottom, and then drag over that bud. Fat part at the bottom, drag over the bud. Okay, and let the nail turn for you. And what you're trying to do here is each time you do a petal, you're overlapping about halfway from the one before and then coming down again. So up, I'm just going to exaggerate it, and then down. Up, just exaggerating it, and then down. And just keep going until you've got your rose to sort of the size that you want it. And as I said, bear in mind, if you're going to be doing embeds on the top of your soap, you don't really want to get them too big, because you've got to keep them on the top of your soap without slicing them. The first thing I need to do is create a base layer for my soap, and I'm going to be using a slab mould. So here I've got all my melted oils that I need for this whole layer. And then just have a look at the colours. I've got some antique silver from Mica Mama, just dispersed in some of my base oils. Then I've got some neon purple from Mica Mama, again dispersed in my base oils, but with neons I always really smush them all around the jug just to make sure they're not bitty at all, because they're quite hard to disperse. And then I'm also going to be using some titanium dioxide, which again I've pre-dispersed. And then the fragrance oil I'm using, I guess slightly unusual for a soap that's going to have flowers on it, but I've done a couple of soaps recently with sort of a flower type theme, and I've used floral fragrance oils, and I know not everyone likes florals. So this is bergamot and tarragon leaves, so still staying along the sort of, let's say, herbaceous plant sort of theme, as it were, but not a pure floral, because as I said, not everyone likes florals in their soaps. So it's going to be a fairly simple base soap. So let's just add my lye solution, and that's got my sodium lactate in it as well. Let's get those in together. Okay, so there's my batter. Just brought to an emulsion. It's not at a trace yet. Now this isn't a difficult pour. I could let it get a bit thicker, but although I'm doing a layer and I want this layer to set up because I want to pour another layer on top of it, my primary goal, apart from having a nice swirl, is that I want this layer to be flat, really flat. Because when I do this technique, I'm going to be carving down into this layer. And I want it to be a predictable depth. You know, if I've got a lumpy, bumpy layer, I'm going to end up with a very irregular pattern. So me, fluid soap batter, even though I want it to set up, I'm going to wait for it to set up rather than risk having it lumpy, bumpy in my mould. I'm just going to divide this batter up into these 3 parts so I've got it equal. I've divided out the batter into 3 even parts, and I'm just mixing in my fragrance oil at the moment. Okay, so I've brought these to an emulsion. They're still not at a trace here. My fragrance oil is in, the batters are divided evenly, and my fragrance oil is divided evenly. They are starting to come to a trace. So I'm just going to wait for that trace to appear. I'm not going to stick blend anymore, and then just going to get this poured into my soap mould. So I've got these to a nice trace now, so I'm just going to start pouring them in just a very simple pour. This is only going to be 1 bar thick, so it's not particularly thick as in a high loaf. I'm not going to go all the way to the top of this slab. So I'm just really doing sort of an in the mould swirl rather than in the pot swirl. Could just do it in the pot if you wanted. And I've deliberately left my white till the end because I want the white to be, or rather I want my base soap to be a little lighter as it shows up against my top layer colour. This is a lovely fresh sort of herbaceous smell, this. It is very nice. Okay. Just going to get this as even as I can. Let's get these blobby bits scooped down. And then, as I said, I'm just going to do a very simple swirl. And the only reason I'm doing this is because once someone's been using the soap and has got the design off the bar, I still want there to be some interest in the underlying soap. So just having a little bit of a design in that underlying soap. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this to set up, and then I'm going to pour a top layer on the top of it. So my base is now set up enough to pour the top layer on. So I've just mixed up a very small, just over 100 grams, actually 140 grams of oil into some soap to give me a nice thin layer. And I'm going to pour this deliberately thin. It is literally just emulsified. Now this colour is, let's have a look, Hideous Sludge Green from Mica Mama. I'm sorry, it's not really. This is one of those morphing greens. It's actually beautiful emerald shimmer from Mica Mama, but it's one of those ones that does go a horrible sludgy colour until it's saponified. So, and it's got sort of some wavy lines, but it is properly dispersed, so hopefully those will disappear a bit. Now, what's going to happen with a lot of this green is a lot of it's going to actually get scraped off anyway, and we'll see that in the next stage. But this will turn back from this sort of yucky sludge green to this rather nice, shimmery, bright green. And now what I want to do is I want to put my roses on now, or my flowers, whatever sort of flowers they are, before my soap sets up. So I'm just sort of going to turn it the way the bars are going to go. And I'm going to put these roses on. And the idea is I want them to sink in, so they're just peeping out of the soap and sort of giving a little bit of texture almost. I'm going to try it with one. I don't think my layer is too deep. If it is, if this green's too deep, I'm going to fish this out again, and then we'll try again when it's a little bit more set up. No, I think that's going to be perfect. Okay, so there we are. I'm tempted to put a third flower on, but I really don't want to, because I do have a few of them spare, but I can use them for something else. And I'm just conscious that I do want to have some greenery on these bars as well. So let's leave our, what kind of looks a bit like a sludgy pond at the moment, alone to saponify overnight. And then we can start doing our carving tomorrow. Let's hope my carving skills are good. My drawing skills are not that great. I can make soap better than I can draw. So let's hope that more of my soap making prowess comes into carving these out than my basic drawing skills. We'll see tomorrow. So we're back the next day. Let's just move my cutter out the way. And I've unmoulded my soap. And can you see that sludge green has turned into that lovely bright green that we've got? Now, can you see I've just in the middle there, I've got a light covering of soda ash. Now, I really, very rarely ever get soda ash at all, because I do a water discount, cover my soaps and all of that sort of stuff. I was sort of expecting some soda ash, but I didn't bother spraying with any rubbing alcohol. First of all, because I find that doesn't make any difference. Certainly for me it doesn't. But also, I'm going to be getting rid of quite a lot of this green anyway, so I wasn't too worried about it. Now, the reason I was sort of expecting a little bit of soda ash was because this was not a full poured loaf of soap. So therefore in my slab mould, where I would normally cover it and seal it quite nicely, there was quite a big air gap between the top of my mould and my actual soap. So there was a lot more air that was available there to trigger that soda ash off. Okay, so that's why I've got that light little covering in it. So first of all, I'm just going to slice this up into 3, what would be loaves, but obviously they're only 1 bar thick. I've got this set to the size I want it. Let's make sure I get this round the right way. Yes, that should be. No, no, that's not right. Let's cut this the right way. Okay. That should be right. Yes. One. Okay, so you can see the design we've got going through the middle. So even when we've got through the top, that bottom part will still give us a nice attractive soap. And I actually quite like this bright green. Normally when I make this soap, the green's in there with the other colours, and I like it as a bright green because it really lifts the soap. You can't really see it from here, but that silver is lovely and sparkly. So there's one done. Let's do another one. Okay, so there's our soaps cut into their, what would be loaves if I was doing a whole slab. Then we'll just divide this by 3. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be under just under 9 centimetres, but let's check. Yes, 26.7. 8.9 centimetres I want. Okay, and then typically what I do is once I've measured 1, I use that to measure the others rather than keep having to measure them all. My cutter does have a little ruler that I can measure against, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of trying to measure it up against the ruler when it's on the cutter. I kind of like to just do a little mark. It's just the way it works for me, so that's the way I like to do it better. Okay, so I can now just turn this around the other way and get these cut. Okay, so there's all my bars cut up. Now, if you're wondering about the cutter, this is called the Caterpillar cutter, and it's from the amazing Alex and Alex at Custom Craft Tools. So if you are looking for this cutter, that's where you'll find it. It's not a cheap piece of equipment, but nothing is from custom craft tools, but the quality and the fact that it's going to last you a lifetime, I think is worth the money. Okay, so now I need to take these soaps and probably do the bit that's maybe going to take the longest out of the whole soap preparation, is to start doing my carvings on them. Okay, so what I'm going to do with these first of all is I'm going to sort of sketch a little outline of what I want first. Just very, very gently, just marking the top of this a tiny bit. Draw just some design for some leaves. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but I've kind of just scratched lightly a design. Now if I was doing the normal way round, I would now just scratch that design out, but now I need to remove everything around the outside of that. So I'm going to carry on doing that. I've literally just got some very simple tools, just from Amazon, and I'm just going to gradually just go through and scratch this soap off, starting off sort of quite widely, and then getting closer and closer to the design. Okay, so just making sure I just get down to just to the purple layer, and then stopping. Okay, so you are definitely going to have some extra soap from this, and this I'm just going to squash down into one of those, what do they call it, mooncake moulds or something, and just turn it into a bar of soap for me. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on doing this until I've got this shape that I want. Okay, so here's the first stage of my carving, and as I said, I was sort of doing this in I guess a negative fashion, in that where I've seen other people do the intaglio is they carve the design out of the soap. What I wanted to do was to have the plant leaves and stem actually coming out so they were sort of level with the plant, as it were, rather than them being a sunk in picture. Because if that was the case, I would have had to have done green underneath, wouldn't I? And a different colour on the top with those. So that's coming along quite well. This is not a technique you want to do for selling profitable soap bars or anything. It's more something of sit down on a Sunday afternoon with a good film on and just doodle along doing some art. So what I'm going to now do, and one of the other reasons why I did mine like this, is I still need to tidy up a little bit about the sides of it. But what I'm going to do is, on my leaves, I want to actually sort of sculpt them a little bit so that they're not straight on the side. So I'm going to sort of curve them down a little bit. Now, gosh, I don't know if we'll be able to see this. So I'm literally going to go through and take some of the edges off so the leaves are, I don't want a 90-degree angle, I want a gradual slope, sort of like you do get with leaves where you have them thinner towards the edge. Okay, and this is just a very cheap tool set I got from Amazon. It was literally a couple of pounds, and to be honest, the ends and that all fall off, and I keep having to super glue them on. So it's nothing specialised. Okay, so I'm just going along and doing the edge of those leaves. Yeah, as I say, this has to definitely be a labour of love technique, and doing it the other way round, carving into the soap, would actually be quicker. And then to finish off the leaf, I'm just going to put the veins on. Might curve that down a bit more. This is a very, I guess you could say it's either an annoying technique or a very relaxing technique. Certainly at the moment I'm finding it very relaxing because I'm just doing this in an evening, I've finished all my work, so it's very pleasant to do. If I was trying to bash these out quickly for a shop release or something, I may not be finding this quite so amusing. Okay, so can you see, I'm not sure if you can see how I've sculpted that leaf down and put the little veins in it. So, I'm going to carry on with these. Good job I didn't do a bigger batch, wasn't it? And then come back with some final photos. So here are my finished soaps, and I am really pleased with them. They did, as I said previously, they did take a long time to do. Each one of them took about 25 minutes to do on average. I sort of looked at when I started and when I stopped. So therefore, when you think about it, those 12 bars, that's, let's say 30 minutes a bar, just so I can do the math. That's about 6 hours to do all of those. So definitely more of a labour of love or a thing to do if you're feeling artsy and that sort of thing. But they have come out really cute. I like the fact that I've done the bars sort of in the slab mould, so then you get that nice sort of design all the way through. So even by the time you've used up the flowery bit on the top, you're still going to have a nice looking bar of soap. Okay, let's just pull out a couple of them, just so you can see them up closer. Okay, so still a nice bar of soap around the outside, and then my little design. And you see what I've sort of tried to bevel the design over for the flowers. So yeah, I am really pleased with them. I do really like them and they smell nice. Here's my excess stuff, as it were. So there's my green that I scraped off of the top, and the little purple I've just beveled the sides. I've weighed this. There's 75 grams of soap in here. So although it did look like I was scraping quite a lot off, remember that green layer was very thin. Certainly if you did something like this, you could do it the normal / proper way, where you engrave in to get your design, whereas I sort of engraved all the excess off to leave my design. But for me, 75 grams of soap. My batch was 1,100 grams of oils. So I would say that would then take that about 50 grams of oils in there that I've scraped off the soap. But this, I'm just going to compress it all together and squish it into one of those mooncake moulds and that will just give me a little bar of soap that I can use at home. Okay, I'm not going to do any final photos of these because you can see them all here and we've just had a chat about them, but I hope you like them. I do really like them. I enjoyed doing them, but I must admit it's not a technique that I would do again and again and again on a regular basis. And I do like the fact that I've got my little flowers on them as well. So I hope you liked them too, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, guys, why not subscribe to my channel? And if you've got any questions or comments, then pop them in the comments section below. These will be for sale in the shop as soon as they're cured. And thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.